Hey, it's Scott Petrak with another episode of the Brown Zone Coverage Podcast. The long run up to the NFL draft has officially begun, with Senior Bowl practices this week in Mobile, Alabama. Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski, and other members of Cleveland's personnel department and coaching staff are in attendance. The Browns also promoted veteran assistant coach Bill Musgrave to quarterbacks coach, and the Super Bowl matchup has been set. Here to discuss, as always, is Dave Chudowsky of Go, the WKYC Morning News. How's it going, Chud?
It's going all right. It's like a heat wave, Scott. With all the cold weather we've had, it feels like summertime. But then if this was September, we'd be like, oh, it's freezing,
I, I
So,
got to tell you, Chud, when we get done with this, I'm going to go hit some golf balls at an outdoor driving range. That's how warm it is out
whoa.
there. Yep.
I'll, see there? It's all about perspective. You're making it happen. That's
Try it.
that's great news. I can tell you I will not be at the golf range, but anyway, I was thinking about yesterday. I was talking to a guy when I was working out. He was he was talking about how much he loves this time of year. And I'm just thinking, man, he loves the combine. He loves the draft. And I was just like, I mean, the season just ended. Like, I need time to heal. It's like after surgery. I need to heal from this Brown season. But there we are. I started thinking about it. I mean, this is what happens to us, and this is what we know more. Like in Kansas City, they don't even know this life. Like
Right.
this is our world. It's like Senior Bowl, and now I will say this: we finally get a draft pick to talk about after giving them away the last few years.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a different world. It really is. And, I go to the combine every year, and the teams that are in the Super Bowl, like the Chiefs, and, before that, the Patriots, uh, their writers just have a whole different agenda than we do. It's about the Super Bowl. It's about what happened next. It's about the coordinators that left to go be coaches elsewhere. And from a Browns perspective, for most of my tenure doing this, it's been about, okay, how's the rebuild going? What are they going to do at quarterback? Who are they going to take with this top 10 pick? And you're right, that's gone, I mean, since 2020 when they drafted, Jed Wills number 10. That's pretty much gone away because they went to the playoffs and then they traded all the three first round picks for Watson. So it hasn't been this intense focus, but now it's back because 3 and 14, because number two pick in the draft, because they need a quarterback. So it's back to where we were for so long. And I think, it's like riding a bike, you get back into it, but it's a long process. And one of the beat writers, Chris Easterling from the Akron Beacon Journal, texted me the other day, and he says, he's like, I'm ready for the draft. I'm like, the draft's 3 months from now. You're gonna have to slow down, right? Like, because he means he's ready. Like, let it get here because I'm sick of talking about it. Like, yeah, you got to pace yourself because it's a long run up. We're gonna be talking about this for a long time. Get used to talking about, Shadir Sanders and Cam Ward and Jalen Milroe and Jackson Dart. You just have to. You're right. You have to pace yourself, and that's why like you try not to kind of blow it all out in January 20th because there is a long time to come before or January 30th before we get to the actual pick being made on April 24th.
Yeah, yeah. All right, let's go to the Senior Bowl. And Andrew Berry spoke with a couple of members of the media. Was it Mary Kay and Zach and who else was down there, Scott?
Yeah,
I knew you weren't down there.
yeah, I'm not done it. Mary Kay, Cabot, Cleveland.com, Zach Jackson, The Athletic, and then Kelsey Russo from the team website. And
Okay,
that's
all right,
that's the only three down there. Yeah.
all right. So anyway, those stories are popping up, and one is let's just get this out of the way because then we're gonna have more conversation about quarterbacks. Myles Garrett, Andrew Berry said that he's not trading them, not even for two first round picks.
Yeah, I mean, he reiterated what he said to us in the news conference right after the season that he plans for Miles to go straight from Cleveland to Canton in the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
He's not going to do a big rebuild. He doesn't foresee trading the cornerstones away. So he doubled down on that, and to me the most important nugget was he was asked, "What about two first round picks?" And he said, "No, you can put that on the record." I'm paraphrasing. So Uh, that was always the discussion. Well, what if they get a huge haul? And he said they're not trading Myles Garrett. So I think we can put that to bed. And then the offshoot of that is that means an extension is probably coming soon. Now, is soon next month? Is it March? Is it June? But Myles Garrett is going to get a big contract, and it's probably going to reset the market for non-quarterbacks because you can argue he's the best non-quarterback in the league. You can certainly argue he's the best defensive player in the league, and that's such a premium position that he's probably going to be the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history, which I think he was when he signed the last extension.
Yeah. So you think he'll be the highest paid,
Yep.
highest paid non-quarterback?
Yep.
Yeah. So I feel like you've answered this in the past. Let's do it quick so we can move on.
Yeah.
What would you rather have, Myles Garrett or 2 first-round picks?
Yeah, I would take Myles Garrett. You can't count on those draft picks, especially a team that trades for him would likely be good, and you're getting low first rounders. And even take that part of it out of the equation. You don't, in my opinion, you don't trade future Hall of Famers in their prime who want to be in your organization. You figure out a way to build around them. So I think it's the right move not to trade Myles.
Okay. The other top things that were talked about is Barry feels that he can find a quarterback in this draft.
Yeah, and I agree with him. The question is, do you find the guy at number 2? Do you wait until 33 at the top of the second round? Do you wait until the third round? I'm with Barry that even in quarterback or even in draft classes that are considered weak at quarterback, you should be able to find someone. And I don't think this one is historically weak. I keep going back to the one where Kenny Pickett was the first round pick, and then Malik Willis went in the third round, was the second quarterback taken. This draft is not like that draft. Cam Ward and Shadur Sanders could go 1 and 2 in whatever order. You got Jalen Milroe, you got Jackson Dart, you got other guys. Riley Leonard from Notre Dame, Will Howard from Ohio State, Cal McCord that used to be at Ohio State. There's guys that are going to be drafted and going to be drafted high and then relatively high. So I agree with Barry that you can find your quarterback. Now, Jim Nagy, who runs the Senior Bowl, said he doesn't think any of the quarterbacks in the draft would be in the top 6 from a year ago. So you have to manage expectations. You have to decide, is it worth taking a guy at 2? And Barry also said you can't force the pick at number 2. So again, we're early in this process. It's way too early to tell if the Browns like a guy to take him at number 2. Do they like 2 enough to take whoever's left at number 2? If Tennessee takes one at number 1. But I do believe you can come away from this draft with a guy that at least projects to be your long-term starting quarterback. Whether that's day 1 at number 2 or later on in the draft, I think you can find someone.
You say Jim Nagy, and I think Charles Nagy.
Yeah.
Great memories.
Yeah.
Great memories. But yeah, I was going to ask you about the Nagy, so you answered that. So let's move on to Shadur Sanders. And he's the biggest name, right? Scott, biggest name out there as far as quarterbacks go. I mean, or would you say it's a tie? What would you say?
Well, when you say biggest name, I would say yes, because it's the Sanders name and Deion's his dad. So
Yeah.
I think everything that comes with Shadur, he's, let's call him the most compelling quarterback prospect in this draft. I think there's a legitimate argument whether he or Cam Ward is the better player, has a bigger upside. I haven't watched a ton of these guys. During the NFL season, it's hard on Saturdays. I'm traveling sometimes. I'm writing, so I recorded some of their games. I went back and watched, and I like a lot of things about Shadur. I think there's some question marks about him, whether he's worthy of a top 2 pick. Cam Ward, what I've watched so far, Cam Ward, I love. Guy stands in the pocket. He's got a big arm, makes a ton of throws. I know that there's some negatives out there with him too, from a scouting perspective. So I'm looking to dive into these guys more, but I think there's a legitimate question on who's the better quarterback and who will go number 1. But Sanders brings a lot with him that makes him the base name.
Now, he's not practicing at the Senior Bowl, right? And there's a little bit of gossip or storyline about that, right?
Well, he went to the East-West Shrine Bowl and he interviewed with teams but didn't practice. And there was a report that the Browns asked him not to practice. Andrew Berry said that was garbage. That wasn't true. Now, he said he doesn't care if he practices or not. That doesn't affect their evaluation. But the Browns weren't behind him not practicing. And then he is not at the Senior Bowl. And the Senior Bowl doesn't allow players to just come and interview. If you come, you have to
Yeah.
practice. So he's not at the Senior Bowl. Cam Ward has not been at any of the All-Star games. And then, the next step in this is at the Combine at the end of February. And, they'll be there. And then we have to see, do they throw at the Combine or not?
How about the story, which goes back weeks now, but that Deion would not let him play with the Browns? We have an update on that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Andrew Berry said he doesn't think that's an issue. He told the 3 reporters down in Mobile that he doesn't see that being an issue. So I don't know if that means Deion has said, hey, we're good if you draft him, or Deion just hasn't said, told him, hey, we're not coming to Cleveland, and Deion's already informed a couple teams. Because Deion has said publicly that there's teams that he doesn't want Shedeur to play for. So, I trust Andrew Berry when he says that he thinks that's not an issue. Any team that's drafting in the top 5 obviously is coming off a terrible season. So I don't think Deion would rule out a team because they were bad last year. You can point to the Hasms and say, how bad the Browns have been through the course of their ownership. They've also been to the playoffs twice in the last 5 years. There's stability with Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski. I think if you just look at Berry and Stefanski, if you're Deion Sanders, you'd say, yeah, I'm good with my kid playing there. They're both, they feel like stand-up guys. They're both smart. They come across well. So for Deion to say no, it would have to be he thinks the organization is dysfunctional. And I know that's been the reputation the Browns have had a lot since they came back in '99. I feel like they've moved past that to a great degree. So I tend to believe that Sanders would not say no, Shedeur can't play for you.
So Scott Petrak analysis, you would be comfortable with them drafting Sanders?
Well, that's a different question than would Deion let them draft him.
I'm saying
right.
I'm saying based on knowing that there's a possibility there could be drama along with the whole package, Scott.
Yeah.
The whole package.
Well, yes, I would be. I think you have to know a little bit what you're getting into, Chud, and that's Deion won't be invisible. He's a strong personality, has strong convictions and beliefs. But having all that, I don't think Deion is a destructive force in Shedeur's life. It's the opposite. He just wants what's best for his son. You saw Archie Manning do the same thing with Eli, 20 years ago. So, yeah, I'd be fine if the Browns drafted Shedeur. I just think you have to be aware that a lot comes, and I was going to say circus. It's not a circus. There's just a couple other elements that come with it when you have Deion as the dad. And Deion will talk, and Deion talks a lot, and he does reality TV. But even knowing all that, if you believed he was worth the number 2 pick in the draft, and he was going to be the quarterback that could take you to the playoffs and the Super Bowl, then yeah, I would draft him and not be concerned about the other stuff.
Yeah. All right, we'll circle back to the number 2 pick at the very end of this. But let's get some other things out of the way. Not necessarily out of the way, but let's talk about them. Stefanski being there. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, it just shows how the organizational approach must change when you have a number 2 pick and the number 33 pick and whatever it's going to be, 4 or 5 in the top 102. We don't have the final draft order, compensation picks and that kind of thing. But if you have such a high pick, you want to get down there. And I know Sanders and Ward aren't there, but it's also you need a quarterback. So Jalen Milroe is there. Jackson Dart is there. There's other quarterbacks there. So all of it just means the draft is more important to the Browns this year because they're back picking first round, second round, and that's why your coach is down there.
What do you think of Milrow?
He's an interesting one, Chud, and I'm going to reference my buddy Chris Eastern again. He watches a bunch of college football, big SEC guy, went to Kentucky. And so we've been talking a lot about Milrow, and there's positives and negatives. And the first game I turned on, he was fantastic. It was like the second half of the LSU game. He made plays with his feet. He made big time throws. I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy's he's a top 10 looking quarterback. Then you watch the Michigan Bowl game, and he's got a chance to go down and lead a winning touchdown, and he throws some incompletions. They don't get it done. Um, there's some inaccuracy at times. So he's not a finished product. He's an unbelievable athlete that can run it great. Like Michael Vick, Lamar Jackson kind of comparisons for him as a runner. And I think we saw this driven home in the conference championship games that's a huge element in NFL offenses today. And if you're struggling to move the ball or you got a 4th and 4, quarterback run is now a real option if you have that type of quarterback. And defenses have a hard time shutting that down. I mean, Mahomes ran off the right side for a touchdown with the lead blocker and Kelsey, right? He had 2 guys in front of him. So that element, I think, is more important. I think we'll see more of that from the Browns. So that part I like about Murrow, but you still need to be able to stand in the pocket and throw the ball. And he's inconsistent in that area. Now, he's the academic Heisman winner, so he's incredibly smart. He worked with Tommy Rees, the new coordinator at Alabama in 2023. They went to the national title game. So there's a lot to like about him, but you also have to know that he's probably not ready right now or that there's going to be big time growing pains. If you told me he could turn into Jalen Hurts, which feels like a good comparison, then yeah, I would take him. You're not taking him at 2, but would you take him at 33? Yeah, if that's a player he's going to turn into be, if you know he's going to be consistent enough throwing. So I still need to see more. I need to hear more from him. But the Browns know him super well because of Tommy Rees. They're getting to know him better at the Senior Bowl because he's down there, and Bubba Ventrone is the coach of his team at the Senior Bowl. So the Browns are behind the scenes in the meeting rooms. He's certainly a guy that we're going to have to talk about a lot. And last point on him, they measured the Senior Bowl, and he's got small hands. And some people might dismiss that. I don't. I think it's important for a quarterback. It's from a fumble perspective, ball security, bad weather. Hand size matters, and his are small. They're under 9 inches. So I think that's just another factor to be considered.
Interesting. All right. How did Ventrone? How did he? I missed that. I know he's coaching, but how did he get that spot?
Yeah, they started a program down at the Senior Bowl 2 or 3 years ago where I think they call it coaching up, and they take somebody from an NFL staff who's not yet at that position. So somebody who's not a head coach is a head coach. Somebody who's not a coordinator becomes a coordinator. So, Bubba has aspirations to be a head coach in this league. He hasn't been shy about that at all. So he gets that job. And usually they take a team that is picking high in the draft, not in the playoffs. So the Giants, Mike Kafka, their offensive coordinator, Northwestern guy, he's the other team, the national team at the Senior Bowl. He's their head coach. Jacques Cesaire, the Browns D-line coach, is the national team's defensive coordinator. So it's an opportunity for the coaches. It's great for the teams to have their guys be around all these prospects at the Senior Bowl.
And since we're talking about coaches, got a new QB coach, Bill Musgrave. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, to me, there's 2 things. One, he's incredibly experienced. He's been in this league forever. He played quarterback in the league, was a backup to Joe Montana, Steve Young, and John Elway. So that's a great way to start your resume. The year after he retires, he becomes a coach in the league and coaches quarterbacks. He's coached quarterbacks for a bunch of teams. He's been a coordinator for 6 teams in the NFL. His last stop before the Browns was a coordinator at Cal. The last 2 years, he's been a senior offensive assistant. So you see him around. So he's super experienced. I think he is a nice compliment to Tommy Rees, who's never been a coordinator before. So you get a veteran guy with a young guy in that quarterback room. He's had experience working with different type of quarterbacks, Derek Carr and Jeff George, Matt Ryan, who are pocket quarterbacks. And then he worked with Michael Vick, He was a quarterback coach in Atlanta with Michael Vick when Michael Vick ran for 1,000 yards. First quarterback to do that in NFL history. So if the Browns get a guy that they feature is a running quarterback to whatever degree, he has experience there. So it makes sense. The only other point is, the Browns, well, out of three big hires they made this offseason, coordinator, quarterback coach, offensive line coach, two of the three were promotions from a staff that, I'm not blaming those guys, but the Browns were awful on offense last year. So they're just promoted from within, and then they go out and get an offensive line coach. So that's the only kind of question to me is, could you have brought in outside guys? Could you have kind of expanded the staff? But Stefanski chose not to do that.
Got a new fullback on the roster?
Yeah, it's interesting, Chud, that when I first, these reserve futures contracts, they're all practice squad kind of guys. All it means is they're going to be on your 90-man roster when that gets set in March and April. So a lot of them are, to me, they're just throwaway transactions. And, so I read this one. It was, okay, he's a running back. He's been in the league a little bit. But you start looking into it a little bit. He's a fullback, not a running back. In the Browns, the press release just says running back. He's actually a fullback. Played defense in college in the MAC, one of the directional Michigan schools. I want to say Central Michigan. So he played linebacker and D-line, gets into the NFL, transforms to fullback, and he's played 18 games, 5 starts, no rushes. I think he's got 5 catches in his career. And it doesn't mean the Browns are going to go back to having a fullback because they really haven't had one the last few years, at least last couple of years. They've used, Nick Harris, the center, at fullback on occasion, or Winston Reed, the linebacker, or line up an extra tight end in the backfield when they feel like they need to do that. But they like to have one at least for the offseason. It gives them some flexibility. You can do different things in your offense. And as the Browns settle on what the scheme's going to be, it could feature more of a fullback like it did early in Stefanski's tenure here. So I do think that's something to watch, and an interesting January roster move when there aren't a whole lot of those.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Hey, I just want to say congratulations to you because this news might mean more to you than it actually means to Joel Bitonio for making the Pro Bowl. I'm sure you're very excited, Scott.
Yeah, it's good. I just feel it's good for Joel. We'll have to see if this is his last game, or on the Pro Bowl, if you want to count that as a game. But the Pro Bowl game's on Sunday because we still don't know if he's going to retire or not. But yeah, so Joel gets the call up because Joe Thuney of the Chiefs has to go to the Super Bowl, so can't go to the Pro Bowl. So Joel gets the nod. It's a 7 straight. I think from a strictly resume and statistical standpoint, it counts as 7 in a row, even though he wasn't, he was an alternate versus on the team when the voting happened. And this is no knock on Joel. It's one guy drops out, Joel gets in. Great for him. The Browns are counting it as 7 in a row. There's only Jim Brown, Lou Groza, and Joe Thomas are the only 3 Browns players with more Pro Bowl appearances than Joel has. But just to take a step back from Joel, when you get all these guys pulling out, whether it's injuries or they're going to the Super Bowl or whatever, and you wind up with a pretty diluted Pro Bowl roster. And that's not just about Joel, but especially the quarterbacks. I think Russell Wilson's going to the Pro Bowl as a quarterback, right? So, we saw Tyler Huntley one year go to the Pro Bowl.
Yeah.
So it gets watered down. That's a separate conversation than Joel. I feel good for Joel.
Yeah, yeah. One thing I forgot, I got 2 more things for you, but one thing I forgot is Shedeur Sanders was asked about his number 1 attribute at quarterback, and that kind of made some headlines. I don't know if it means anything or not, Scott. Right. I kind of somewhat laugh at it, but whatever. It's the same answer that Reese gave.
Right, which makes sense because decision making should be the number 1 thing. So, I like that that's his answer. And it's not, hey, I run a 4.240, which he doesn't do. Or I got the biggest arm, which he doesn't have, which are those are 2 of the things teams are going to have to weigh with Sanders. He's not he doesn't have a huge arm. He's not an elite athlete, but he's a good decision maker, and he's calm in the pocket, and he's a tough guy because his offensive line was bad and he took a bunch of hits. There's a lot to like about him, and at the top of that list is decision making, and why it's quote unquote newsworthy is because Tommy Reese said that's the number one thing he's looking for. So they line up there, but it should be no secret that that's the number one thing you're looking for in a quarterback.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, I won't hold you to this, but every time we talk, I'm just going to get an update as to what you think. Number 2 pick, do you keep the pick? Do you trade it? If you do keep it, do you draft a quarterback or do you draft a different position?
Yeah, keep asking me and I'll keep giving you answers that I don't even remember what I said the last time. Right now, I'm going to go with keep the number 2 pick and take a quarterback. That's where I'm leaning right now. And I don't know if that changes until we get to the combine and we get some real new information. But right now, it feels like that's where you get your quarterback. But again, you're not going to hold me to it, and I'm glad you're not holding me to it.
Not going to hold you to it. It's just for the enjoyment of our listeners, Scott. That's all it is.
Yep.
But
one day, it's just what you feel like. You feel they need a quarterback. That's the best way to get one. And again, that could change if I hate all these quarterbacks. I think the Browns hate all the quarterbacks. Not hate, don't love the quarterback enough for number 2 or what they do in free agency. All that changes it. I just can't get past. They have a huge hole at quarterback, and that's a great one. That's a great spot normally to get one.
Yeah, one day we'll hold you to it, but not today.
Fair enough.
Yeah. All right, let's finish up here with the AFC and NFC championship games, unless you got something else I forgot.
No, let's go.
All right, so congratulations, buddy. You picked the Super Bowl exactly right on at the beginning of the year, Chiefs and Eagles. Well done.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I was waiting for somebody to let me take a victory lap. So it's you, Chud. I appreciate that. It's so funny, like I tweeted out throughout the playoffs. I do it every year. Who I think is going to win each game. So on Saturday before the first thing, I pick it, whatever. And so Sunday, I say, hey, it's going to be Eagles and Chiefs. And, the first couple responses are wrong. It's going to be Commanders and Bills. Like, okay. The people hit you with that. And then, I resisted the urge to go back and say, you were wrong. I was right. I was right before the season. Now, they might have been the betting favorites. I don't think the Eagles were, but they had to be in the top 3 or 4. But hey, I'm still feeling good about it. I don't often get those picks right. So I got the Super Bowl matchup correct. And I do feel good about it. Now, I picked the Eagles ahead of, to win the Super Bowl when I picked them in September. I reserve the right to change that next week when we do a little Super Bowl preview pod in our picks and change it to Kansas City. But I feel good that they got there. And what a game between Kansas City and Buffalo, Chud.
Yeah. Well, no, you deserve it. And one thing I've learned over time is that nobody really cares about our predictions when we get them right. But we hear about it when we get them wrong. And then I used to put them out there on Twitter and social media, and I kind of stopped doing it. I like doing it with you on here. And I used to do it on the air when I was in sports. Heck, I used to do every Browns game every Sunday morning.
Right.
But one thing I'll say, I got the NFC one wrong, and I have a blind spot to Philadelphia. I just thought that they would lose at some point, and they didn't. So congrats to them. But the one thing I can lean on is that I picked the Chiefs to three-peat at the beginning of the year. So I still have that prediction. Now I had them beating the Packers in the Super Bowl, which obviously didn't turn out. But I do have my Super Bowl champion still intact because we talked about it last week. There's just something about this in history, and we'll talk about it next week. But not surprised at all that they beat those. And that team, they just cannot get past the Chiefs. You're right. A heck of a game. They need a yard. They can't get it. The Chiefs need whatever, and they get it. Yep. It comes down to the end. But, basically that was a great game, and the other game wasn't because Washington turned the ball over too much.
Yeah, you're right. And I thought Philly gets a big play early with Saquon going for the long touchdown. Jalen Hurts played really well, and he's going to have to
Oh
play
yeah,
that way if they're going to have a chance to beat the Chiefs. He's going to make some throws. I don't think you beat the Chiefs just running it 40 times. Yeah, I think Steve Spagnuolo and that defense will figure out a way. Well, we'll see, right? We'll see if they can stop Saquon. A lot of teams have struggled to stop Saquon. Obviously, the Chiefs rushed for more than 2,000 yards. But I think in the Super Bowl, you need your quarterback to make some plays. And if you're Philly, I think you feel good watching Hurts make some of the throws he did to beat Washington. And then that Chiefs-Bills game, and who knows, maybe I will pick against Patrick Mahomes next week when we do this. I'm really undecided. But when you're watching that game, what keeps going through my mind is how can you pick against Patrick Mahomes? Just the way that Chiefs-Bills game ended. And it's not all Patrick Mahomes. Spagnuolo calls a great blitz, and they force Josh Allen to make that throw, and he makes an unbelievable throw anyway, and it gets dropped. But the Chiefs make several plays, and it's not just Mahomes. The defense will make a play that have good kick returns. They're such a well-rounded team. But it's also Patrick Mahomes, and you trust him to make big plays down the stretch, and he usually does. And even when the Bills force him to a field goal there, then the Chiefs defense steps up. So I guess when I said not picking against Mahomes, It's hard to pick against the Chiefs, period. And that was just reaffirmed for the millionth time watching the fourth quarter of that championship game.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt. And final record. I'm sorry, we have one more with the Super Bowl. But right now, you're 8-4 in the playoffs. I'm 6-6. So no matter what happens, you got me in the playoffs, man. Nice job.
Thank you very much. I'll take that as a win. I did not win the regular season, Chuck, but I'm winning the postseason.
Yeah, that's right. We each get a title, and now you can go hit golf balls to celebrate.
Perfect. I need the practice.
All right. It's cool. Thursday, one day away from the weekend. Have a good weekend, buddy, and we'll make our Super Bowl predictions next week. And there'll be some sort of Browns news out there. I don't know if there'll be as much as this week, but we'll see.
Of course there will. I appreciate it as always, Chud. Thanks, everybody, for listening. This has been another episode of the Zone Coverage Podcast, and you can read all my work at brownzone.com. Thanks.